So one thing I found really interesting while reading the article was the fact that it was turning your attention to page 3. Was how it says, like, right in the bottom, like in the first column, it says how virtually no democracy in the world has the death penalty except the United States. And I find it really interesting how, like, throughout all the democracies, since we're like the main democracy, but yet we still hold the death penalty.
To add on to that, I thought it was interesting how right after they say that about the United States, it also says that since 1976, more than 1,480 people have been executed with the death penalty.
Okay, well, I'd like to draw your attention to page 2, I think it was, where it says that, well, my wow was that the number of annual executions in the U.S. has declined from 98 in 1999 to 23 in 2017. That wowed me because I thought the number would be going up since then, but it's been going down.
My wow moment was on page 3, I believe. I'd like to draw your attention to page 3. It states that the Supreme Court almost called capital punishment unconstitutional in 1972. So I thought it was interesting how we got that close to calling it unconstitutional, and then
A question that I had while reading the article was, what was the purpose of plea bargains and making deals instead of the death penalty, like when they would get a sentence for life instead of the death penalty?
My significant evidence was on page 3, where it states that the death penalty discriminates against African Americans who make up 12% of the U.S. population, but more than 40% of death row inmates. I feel that is significant because, like, although they're a very small percentage of our population, they make more in our death row inmates, and that shows that they're hugely discriminated in that case.
So I would like to go back to what Giselle had said about what you found interesting. Well, to question, why do you think that the amount of people being executed has gone down?
Why do I think it's gone down? Maybe procedures and stuff on how it's done. There's a long wait list. Maybe they're taking time to maybe look at the cases a little longer to make sure that they're doing it right. Does that make sense?
Well, to add on to that, I also think that I would like to bring your guys' attention to page 3, where it says that looking for a method of execution that would be more humane and less gruesome than the electrocution or hanging states turned to lethal injection in the 1980s. So I think that also a reason why it probably has gone down is because even they think that it's not right to take someone's life away like that, and that's why they're looking for a more humane way, which doesn't make sense.
Also, like, to add on to what Lonnie was saying, I'll draw your attention to page 2 about how even the court says this may be unconstitutional, it may not be the right thing. Also, I find interesting in the thing called the new way to kill, how it says that in the past few years it has become increasingly difficult for states to get drugs needed for lethal injection. That is because the drug manufacturer refused to sell them if they're being used for execution. So it even looks like the people even making the drug even thinks this may not be a right thing to do.
Yeah, I think also when they have a lot of ways of making it so. For example, when they do the lethal injection, they don't know who is the one that has the kill shot. So they so as to not seem so that you don't feel guilty, or you feel like you're the one that murdered this person. And I think that having to do that for something shouldn't have to be that way if you have to have all those little weird things.
In other words, you're saying that basically they already know it's wrong at what they're doing.
Sort of.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if they didn't want to feel guilty about it, obviously they wouldn't do it. but since they have to like almost hide who did it, it kind of proves that like there's something up with it, you know?
I also noticed that on that same page, it says that medical professionals don't take part in it. It's usually just the people who work in those jails. So I think that adds to the whole, like, people not wanting to feel guilty about it.
It also helps because like they are like due to the animosity or anonymous like killings, it allows them to like not get backlash from anybody because they want their identity hidden.
This actually seems a lot like very dangerous that they don't have professionals doing it. Instead, they have people that might not know what they're doing, and that could cause the person dying more harm than it could have been instead of like non-violent death.
And to add on to that, also, it said in page 2 that since the people making these drugs don't want to sell them if they know it's for an execution, that the same like officers that are doing this are the ones that are just like exploring with different medicines and just like risking everything, which is also very dangerous and it's already not right.
I feel like that, or like adding on to that, I feel that it's kind of morally wrong because they're basically using them as test subjects and like basically guinea pigs. So they're not like treating them as humans anymore. So it's very morally wrong.
Kind of like their for the Eighth Amendment. Yeah, for the Eighth Amendment, it says that excessive bail should not be required, nor fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. And the way that they describe this whole process is pretty unusual, and it doesn't seem normal to have to go through all these things to do it. So it kind of seems like they're violating the Eighth Amendment.
To kind of add on to that about the Eighth Amendment, I would like to turn your attention to page 4, and how like in the 2008 court hearing, like Bays versus Reese arrest, it rules that education by lethal injection is not cruel or unusual punishment. And I just find it really interesting how like something like that, even though like we all said, oh, they're trying to hide it, something's like it's not morally right, but yet they say it's not an unusual. It's not unusual, even though they think it is unusual.
So for the first question, for the guiding questions, the first one is, what are the implications, the pros or cons of the Eighth Amendment on the topic of the death penalty?
Well, I saw that the Eighth Amendment was a con for the death penalty because, like you mentioned, it says no cruel and unusual punishment. And after we've all like evaluated this in different cases, we can see that in a lot of the death penalties, they are cruel and unusual. Like you said, they mix medicines and it's not like in a moral way correct.
I also found this a con because like it could also be like a con or a pro, but it depends on how you see it. But if through like how it's a cruel and unusual punishments and how this is like this power was given to the states, it's like a way of showing that like this amendment is opinion based on each state. So like they get to choose what is cruel or unusual. So like I'd say like it's unfair because people don't, or like it depends on the person who is convicting them of this death penalty.
So what do you think about the statistics that say about the percentages of use of the death penalty in the U.S. versus the rest of the world?
I'd like to bring your attention to page 3. Around the middle first column of the page, it says that, like Patrick had said before, African opponents also point to statistics that indicate the death penalty discriminates against African Americans, who make up 12% of the U.S. population, but more than 40% of death row inmates. um, I think that that statement, like Patrick had said before, it seems like it's treating some people unfairly, which isn't constitutional, because it's directly or indirectly placing a certain group of people like sort of lower or less fortunate than others.
And to add on to the question about death penalty in the U.S. versus the rest of the world, on that same page, page 3, it says, internationally, more than 2/3 of the world's countries, including all of Europe except Belarus, have abolished the death penalty. According to Amnesty International, the countries that execute the most people are in China, Iran, and Saudi Arabia.
And to add on to that, it's that in 2017 the U.S. ranked 8th on this list, and that's still kind of pretty high up.
Another thing too, right under that one that I just read, it says virtually no democracy in the world has the death penalty except the United States. It's kind of odd. So our next question was, why do states get to choose to use the death penalty or not?
Kind of feel like it's almost like they kind of, the only reason why they could decide right now, I think the only reason is because in our constitution there's nothing that says like, oh, death penalty this, and because of that, due to the 10th Amendment, it goes to the states, they're empowered. So I think because of that, technically they should be the ones deciding it, but like through all these like court cases, it kind of seems like they're pushing it towards like, no, like maybe we shouldn't be doing it.
I think the fact that the states get to decide on whether or not they have death penalty and the different regulations on it is a clear example of federalism, because like you said, the Supreme Court is setting like the precedents for it, but it's up to the states ultimately to decide how they deal with it.
And our last question is, how can the Fifth Amendment due process clause be used as an argument?
Well, I feel like it can't be used as an argument as to like a pro, because it says right here in the Fifth Amendment that where is it? Oh, here it is. That that be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and I feel that can be kind of used as a pro, because here it's saying that we technically can't take their lives away just because we are going through this process of law, and because of that we can say, oh yeah, due to the Fifth Amendment, we can't even take your life because we're here saying that you either A, deserve it,